Somewhere inside your body, right now, a quiet addiction may be controlling far more than your cravings. It hides in your morning coffee. It waits inside your afternoon snack. It disguises itself in foods that don't even taste sweet. Sugar. For most people, sugar feels harmless, just a small pleasure, a quick burst of energy, a reward after a long day. But what if something very different is happening inside your body every single time you eat it? What if the moment you stop, everything begins to change? Your brain chemistry shifts, your hormones recalibrate, your metabolism starts rewriting its instructions, and something remarkable begins to happen. Inflammation starts to fall, your energy stabilizes, your cells begin repairing damage that has quietly accumulated for years. But the process isn't simple, because when sugar disappears from your diet, your body goes through a series of biological transformations, some uncomfortable, some surprising, and some profoundly powerful. The first changes begin in your brain. Within hours of removing sugar, your brain notices the difference, not because it needs sugar, but because it has become used to it. Sugar stimulates one of the most ancient reward circuits in the human nervous system, the dopamine pathway. Dopamine is the same neurotransmitter involved in motivation, pleasure, and habit formation. Every time you eat sugar, your brain releases a small surge of dopamine. It feels good. Your brain remembers that feeling, and slowly over time, it begins expecting it. This is why sugary foods can feel strangely irresistible, not because your body requires them, but because your brain has learned to chase the reward. So when sugar suddenly disappears, something unexpected happens. Your brain protests, cravings appear. You may feel irritable, restless, or strangely tired. This is not weakness, it is biology. Your brain is adjusting to the absence of a stimulus it had become accustomed to.
But something deeper is already beginning to happen beneath that temporary discomfort. Your blood sugar levels start stabilizing. Normally, when you eat sugar, glucose rapidly floods your bloodstream. Your pancreas responds by releasing insulin, a hormone designed to move glucose into your cells. At first, the system works beautifully, but when sugar consumption becomes constant, insulin levels remain elevated for long periods of time. Cells gradually become less sensitive to insulin's signal. This condition is called insulin resistance. It is one of the earliest biological steps toward metabolic diseases like type 2 diabetes, obesity, and cardiovascular disease. But when sugar intake suddenly drops, the body begins reversing that pressure. Insulin levels fall. Cells slowly become more responsive again. Your metabolic system begins restoring balance. And then something interesting begins happening with your energy. At first, you may feel slower, less stimulated, almost like your body has lost its usual fuel. But that feeling is temporary, because your body is quietly switching energy systems. Instead of relying on rapid spikes of glucose, your metabolism begins learning to access a far older and more stable energy source: fat. Deep within your cells are tiny energy factories called mitochondria. These structures are responsible for converting nutrients into usable energy. When sugar is constantly available, mitochondria primarily burn glucose. But when sugar intake falls, mitochondria begin shifting toward burning fatty acids. This process produces a slower, steadier stream of energy. The result is something many people notice within days. Energy no longer rises and crashes throughout the day. It stabilizes. No sudden afternoon fatigue, no desperate need for another sugary snack, just a calmer, more consistent level of alertness. But this metabolic shift is only the beginning, because the next transformation involves something far more subtle: inflammation. Inside the human body, inflammation is both a defense mechanism and a potential source of damage. In small amounts, it helps fight infections and repair tissue. But when inflammation becomes chronic, it slowly begins harming cells. Excess sugar plays a powerful role in this process. When glucose levels remain elevated, certain molecules begin attaching to proteins and lipids in the body. These compounds are called advanced glycation end products, or AGEs. They accumulate in tissues and trigger inflammatory responses. Over time, this contributes to aging of the skin, stiffening of blood vessels, and damage to delicate cellular structures. But when sugar intake decreases, the formation of these compounds begins slowing down. Inflammatory signals gradually quiet. Your body enters a state that is far more favorable for repair. And that is when one of the most surprising transformations begins. Your taste buds start to change.
Your taste buds start to change. At first, this sounds almost impossible. How could something as simple as removing sugar alter the way you experience flavor? But the human sensory system is remarkably adaptable. When sugar is consumed frequently, taste receptors on the tongue become desensitized. The brain begins expecting a high level of sweetness before something tastes satisfying. That's why foods like fruit or yogurt may seem bland to someone who regularly consumes sugary snacks and drinks. But when sugar disappears from the diet, something fascinating begins happening. Within several days, the sensitivity of your taste receptors starts to reset. Flavors that once seemed mild begin feeling richer. Natural sweetness becomes more noticeable. Strawberries taste sweeter. Almonds taste deeper. Even vegetables begin revealing subtle flavors that were previously hidden beneath the constant dominance of sugar. It's almost as if the sensory world becomes sharper. But the transformation does not stop at your taste buds. It begins spreading throughout your entire metabolic system. Your liver, for example, experiences one of the most immediate changes. The liver plays a central role in regulating blood sugar, processing nutrients, and managing fat storage. But when sugar intake is consistently high, especially in the form of fructose found in sugary drinks and processed foods, the liver begins converting excess sugar into fat.
This process is called de novo lipogenesis. Over time, fat begins accumulating inside liver cells. This condition is known as non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and it has become increasingly common in modern diets. Yet the moment sugar intake drops, the pressure on the liver begins to ease. Fat production slows. Stored fat inside liver cells gradually decreases. Liver enzymes begin moving back toward healthier ranges. It is one of the reasons doctors often see improvements in metabolic health surprisingly quickly when patients reduce sugar consumption. But perhaps the most noticeable change people experience appears on the outside of the body: weight. Not because sugar itself magically creates fat, but because of the hormonal chain reaction it triggers. When sugar repeatedly spikes blood glucose, insulin rises sharply in response. Insulin is not only a blood sugar regulator, it is also a powerful fat storage hormone. When insulin levels remain elevated for long periods, the body becomes more likely to store energy rather than burn it. But when sugar disappears, insulin spikes become less frequent. The body begins shifting toward fat utilization instead of fat storage. Gradually, weight may begin decreasing, particularly around the abdomen, where visceral fat tends to accumulate. This type of fat surrounds internal organs and is strongly linked to metabolic diseases. Reducing sugar intake helps loosen the grip that insulin has on this storage process. And while this transformation is unfolding quietly in your metabolism, something equally important is happening in your brain. Your mood begins to stabilize. Sugar is famous for providing quick bursts of energy and pleasure, but those bursts are often followed by something less pleasant: the crash. When blood sugar spikes rapidly, insulin rushes in to bring glucose levels back down. Sometimes it overshoots. Blood sugar dips. The brain senses the drop, and the result can be irritability, fatigue, difficulty concentrating, and a sudden desire for more sugar. This roller coaster can repeat multiple times throughout the day. But when sugar intake decreases, these sharp swings begin fading. Blood glucose becomes steadier. Your brain receives a more consistent fuel supply, and something subtle yet powerful begins happening. Mental clarity improves. Many people report fewer mood swings, better concentration, and a calmer sense of focus after removing excessive sugar from their diet. But perhaps the most unexpected transformation is about to begin, because sugar does not only affect metabolism and brain chemistry, it also influences something far more complex: your gut microbiome. Inside your digestive system lives an entire ecosystem. Trillions of microorganisms, bacteria, fungi, and other microbes form what scientists call the gut microbiome. These microscopic residents influence digestion, immune function, inflammation, and even mental health. In many ways, they act like an invisible organ inside the body. But like any ecosystem, the gut microbiome responds dramatically to the environment it lives in.
And one of the strongest environmental signals it receives is diet. When sugar intake is high, certain species of bacteria that thrive on simple sugars begin multiplying rapidly. Some of these microbes can contribute to inflammation and metabolic imbalance. Others crowd out beneficial bacteria that normally help regulate digestion and immune responses. Over time, this imbalance, often called dysbiosis, can affect far more than the gut itself. It can influence mood, immunity, and even the body's tendency to store fat. But when sugar intake drops, the ecosystem begins shifting. Microbes that depend heavily on sugar lose their advantage. Other beneficial species begin reclaiming territory. These bacteria help produce compounds called short-chain fatty acids, which support gut lining health and reduce inflammation throughout the body. Gradually, the digestive environment becomes more balanced. Many people notice improvements in bloating, digestion, and overall comfort. But perhaps the most remarkable transformation occurring during this time is taking place inside your cells. Because when sugar intake falls and insulin levels stabilize, the body begins activating repair mechanisms that had been suppressed. One of these mechanisms is known as autophagy. Autophagy is a cellular cleanup process. Damaged proteins, worn-out cellular components, and metabolic debris are broken down and recycled. Think of it as a microscopic maintenance system that keeps cells functioning efficiently. When the body is constantly processing large amounts of sugar and insulin remains elevated, this cleanup system becomes less active. But when metabolic stress decreases, autophagy begins activating again. Cells start repairing themselves more effectively, damaged structures are cleared away, and the overall cellular environment becomes healthier. Scientists believe this process plays a significant role in longevity and disease prevention. But the benefits of reducing sugar extend even further, because sugar also influences one of the most visible organs in the human body, your skin.
At first glance, skin might seem unrelated to something as simple as sugar consumption. But beneath the surface, the connection is surprisingly direct. Your skin is built on a structural network of proteins, primarily collagen and elastin. These proteins give skin its firmness, elasticity, and youthful appearance. They act like the scaffolding that keeps the surface smooth and resilient. But sugar interferes with this structure through a biochemical reaction called glycation. When excess glucose circulates in the bloodstream, it can attach to proteins like collagen. Over time, these sugar-protein bonds form rigid compounds known as advanced glycation end products, the same molecules that quietly contribute to inflammation throughout the body. Inside the skin, AGs begin weakening the collagen framework. Fibers lose their flexibility, the structure becomes more brittle, and the visible result appears gradually: fine lines, dullness, and a loss of elasticity. But when sugar intake decreases, the formation of these damaging compounds slows dramatically. Your body begins preserving the collagen it already has. Inflammation decreases. Skin often appears clearer, calmer, and more balanced. Many people notice fewer breakouts as well. This is not a coincidence. High sugar consumption can increase levels of certain hormones, particularly insulin and insulin-like growth factors. These signals stimulate oil production in the skin and can trigger acne in susceptible individuals. When sugar disappears from the diet, those hormonal signals begin stabilizing. Sebaceous glands calm down. Breakouts may become less frequent. The skin environment gradually shifts toward balance rather than inflammation. But the benefits extend even deeper than appearance, because sugar also influences one of the body's most critical systems, the cardiovascular system. Every cell in your body depends on a vast network of blood vessels delivering oxygen and nutrients. Yet high sugar intake can slowly damage this delicate infrastructure. Excess glucose circulating in the bloodstream increases oxidative stress inside blood vessel walls. This stress weakens the protective lining known as the endothelium. When the endothelium becomes damaged, blood vessels lose some of their ability to expand and contract properly. Inflammatory molecules begin accumulating. Over time, this environment encourages the formation of plaque inside arteries. But when sugar intake decreases, several protective mechanisms begin activating. Blood pressure may begin stabilizing, triglyceride levels often decrease, and the endothelium, that fragile inner lining of the arteries, starts functioning more effectively again. Blood flow improves, the cardiovascular system becomes less strained. Yet one of the most powerful transformations happening during this time remains largely invisible. It occurs during the quietest hours of the night, while you sleep.
While you sleep, your body performs some of its most important maintenance. Cells repair damage from the day, hormones recalibrate, memories consolidate inside the brain. But sugar can quietly interfere with this delicate nightly process. Consuming large amounts of sugar, particularly late in the day, can disrupt the balance of hormones involved in sleep regulation. Rapid blood sugar spikes followed by sudden drops may trigger nighttime awakenings. Cortisol levels can become elevated. The brain remains in a subtle state of metabolic alertness instead of deep recovery. But when sugar intake decreases, something remarkable often happens. Sleep becomes deeper, more restorative. Blood glucose remains steadier through the night. The brain enters longer phases of slow-wave sleep, the stage most responsible for physical repair and immune system recovery. And during these deeper sleep cycles, another critical system becomes more active: the brain's glymphatic system. This recently discovered network acts like a cleaning system for the brain, flushing out metabolic waste products that accumulate during waking hours. Among those waste products are proteins associated with neurodegenerative diseases. Deep sleep enhances the efficiency of this cleanup process, and stable blood sugar levels help make that deep sleep possible. But perhaps the most profound transformation that occurs when sugar disappears from your diet is something that cannot easily be measured with a blood test or a medical scan. It is the restoration of metabolic freedom. When sugar dominates the diet, the body becomes dependent on constant glucose spikes for energy. Hunger arrives quickly, cravings appear suddenly, energy rises and crashes like waves. But when sugar intake falls and the body adapts to using a broader range of fuels, including stored fat, a different metabolic rhythm begins to emerge. Energy becomes steadier, appetite signals become clearer, meals feel satisfying for longer periods. The body regains a flexibility it may not have experienced in years. It can switch smoothly between fuel sources, glucose when it is available,
fat when it is needed. This flexibility is one of the defining characteristics of a healthy metabolism, and it begins returning the moment sugar loses its dominant role in the diet. What started as a simple dietary change begins influencing nearly every system in the body: the brain, the liver, the skin, the heart, the microbiome, even the microscopic repair mechanisms inside individual cells, all responding gradually and quietly to the absence of something that once seemed harmless. Sugar does not disappear from the modern world easily. It hides in sauces, breads, drinks, and processed foods. But the human body has an extraordinary ability to adapt when that constant stream is reduced. Cravings fade, energy stabilizes, inflammation softens. And beneath the surface, countless biological systems begin shifting toward a state that favors balance, repair, and resilience. Not overnight, but steadily. Because the moment sugar stops dominating your diet, your body begins remembering how it was designed to function all along.